The quiet revolution? How patience became humanity's greatest superpower. In a world obsessed with instant gratification, where success is measured in clicks, likes, and overnight transformations, there exists a forgotten art that separates the truly masterful from the merely competent. It's not talent, luck, or even hard work alone. It's something far more profound and accessible to every human being: the revolutionary power of patience. This isn't the passive waiting you've been taught to endure, but an active, intentional force that transforms struggle into strength, setbacks into comebacks, and ordinary people into extraordinary masters of their craft. Introduction: The Patience Paradox. Welcome to the most counterintuitive journey you'll ever take. In the next hour, we're going to explore how slowing down actually speeds up your progress, how embracing difficulty makes things easier, and how patience serial patience-size the ultimate life hack that no one talks about. I want you to imagine two scenarios. In the first, you're scrolling through social media, watching someone demonstrate a skill that took them years to develop, compressed into a 60-second video. Your brain whispers, "That looks easy. I could do that." In the second scenario, you're sitting with a master craftsperson, watching their weathered hands shape clay or tune an instrument with movements so subtle, so refined, that you realize you're witnessing decades of accumulated wisdom in action. The difference between these two experiences reveals everything about our modern relationship with mastery and patience. We've become addicted to the highlight reel while forgetting the behind-the-scenes reality that makes true excellence possible. This audiobook isn't about telling you to be more patient. You've heard that advice before, and it probably didn't stick. Instead, we're going to rewire your understanding of what patience actually is, why it's the secret weapon of every person who has ever achieved something meaningful, and how you can develop it as a superpower in your own life. The patience we'll explore together isn't passive waiting. It's not resignation or settling for less. It's an active, intentional approach to growth that acknowledges a fundamental truth. Everything worthwhile takes time, and that time is not your enemy, it's your greatest ally. Chapter 1. The Anatomy of Impatience. The Cost of Now. Sarah stared at her laptop screen, the cursor blinking mockingly in the empty document. She had been writing a novel for 3 months now, which really meant she had started writing a novel about 15 different times. Each attempt followed the same pattern: burst of inspiration, furious typing for a few hours, growing frustration with the gap between her vision and her words, followed by abandonment and the search for a better approach. Sarah's story isn't unique. It's the story of our time. We live in an era where we can order food and have it delivered in 30 minutes, where we can communicate instantly with people on the other side of the planet, where we can learn almost anything through a quick YouTube search. This instant access world has trained our brains to expect immediate results from everything, including the things that fundamentally cannot be rushed. The neuroscience behind this is fascinating and sobering. Our brains are literally being rewired by the constant stream of immediate rewards that technology provides. Every notification, every quick answer, every instant gratification triggers a small release of dopamine. Over time, we become addicted to this chemical reward system, and our tolerance for delayed gratification, the very foundation of patience, erodes. But here's what's really happening. While we're getting faster at consuming information, we're getting slower at creating anything meaningful. While we're getting better at finding quick answers, we're losing the ability to sit with difficult questions. While we're becoming experts at instant reactions, we're forgetting how to respond thoughtfully. The cost of this impatience epidemic is enormous. We quit learning new skills before we've given them a real chance. We abandon relationships when they require work. We switch careers when the initial excitement wears off. We live in a constant state of beginning, never experiencing the deep satisfaction that comes from seeing something through to mastery. Understanding our wired urgency. To understand why patience feels so difficult, we need to look at how our brains evolved. For most of human history, immediate action was often the difference between life and death. The rustle in the bushes might be a predator, the change in weather patterns might signal famine. The quick reflexes and instant decision-making that kept our ancestors alive have been passed down to us. But now, these same survival mechanisms work against us. Our amygdala, the brain's alarm system, can't distinguish between a charging lion and a difficult conversation with our boss. It floods our system with stress hormones that demand immediate action, making patience feel like danger and urgency feel like safety. Understanding this biological reality is the first step toward developing real patience. When you feel that familiar urge to quit, to take a shortcut, to abandon the difficult work, recognize it for what it is, an ancient survival mechanism that's no longer serving you in the modern world. The myth of instant mastery. Perhaps the most damaging myth of our time is the idea that mastery should feel natural from the beginning. We see finished products, the polished performance, the elegant solution, the masterful creation, and we assume that's how it always looked. We don't see the years of practice, the countless failures, the moments of doubt and frustration that preceded the excellence. This myth is perpetuated by our highlight reel culture, where we only see the best moments, the breakthrough successes, the overnight sensations who actually worked in obscurity for years. Social media has made this worse by giving us unprecedented access to other people's finished work while hiding the messy process behind it. The truth is that mastery always begins with incompetence. Always. Every expert was once a beginner who felt frustrated, confused, and tempted to quit. The difference between those who become masters and those who remain perpetual beginners isn't talent, it's the willingness to stay with the discomfort of not yet being good at something. This is where patience becomes revolutionary. Patience allows you to be bad at something long enough to become good at it. Patience lets you sit with the discomfort of learning without needing to escape to something easier. Patience transforms the journey from a race to a dance. Chapter 2. Redefining patience. Beyond waiting, active patience. When most people think of patience, they imagine passive waiting, sitting in a doctor's office, enduring a traffic jam, tolerating a boring meeting. This kind of patience is endurance, and while it has its place, it's not the kind of patience that creates mastery. True patience, the kind that transforms lives and builds excellence, is active. It's the conscious choice to engage fully with the present moment, even when that moment is difficult, uncomfortable, or not immediately rewarding. Active patience says, I don't know how long this will take, but I'm going to give my complete attention to doing it well right now. Consider the difference between these two approaches to learning a musical instrument. Passive patience says, I'll practice until I get good enough to play the songs I want. Active patience says, I'm going to be completely present with this scale, this chord change, this rhythm exercise, because this moment is where mastery is built. The first approach treats the present as something to endure until you reach the future reward. The second approach treats the present as the reward itself. This shift in perspective changes everything. The 3 pillars of true patience. Real patience rests on 3 fundamental pillars. Understanding and developing these pillars will transform your relationship with difficulty, growth, and time itself. Pillar 1. Acceptance of the timeline. This doesn't mean passive resignation to however long something takes. It means accepting that meaningful things require time and that time is not your enemy. When you plant a seed, you don't dig it up every day to check if it's growing. You trust the process and tend to the conditions that allow growth to happen. Marcus was a software engineer who decided to learn woodworking. For the first 6 months, everything he made looked like it was crafted by an enthusiastic 10-year-old. His cutting was uneven, his joints were loose, his finishes were blotchy. The old Marcus would have quit and bought a different hobby, but Marcus had learned to accept the timeline of mastery. Instead of judging his work against professional furniture makers, he judged it against his own previous attempts. Instead of trying to skip steps to get to the good stuff, he embraced the foundational skills that felt boring but were essential. Instead of rushing through projects, he slowed down and focused on doing each step as well as he could. 2 years later, Marcus created a dining table that his friends couldn't believe he had made himself. But the real transformation wasn't in his woodworking skill set, was in his relationship with learning itself. Pillar 2. Process over outcome. Outcome-focused thinking says, I'll be happy when I achieve the goal. Process-focused thinking says, I find meaning in doing the work itself. This shift is profound because it changes where you locate your satisfaction and motivation. When your satisfaction depends on outcomes, you're at the mercy of factors outside your control. Results take time, and they're influenced by luck, timing, and countless variables you can't manage. But when your satisfaction comes from engaging fully with the process, you're in control of your experience every day. Lisa discovered this when she decided to train for her first marathon. Initially, she was focused entirely on the race day crossing the finish line, achieving her time goal, earning the medal. But training was hard, progress was slow, and she found herself constantly frustrated with how far she had to go. Then she shifted her focus. Instead of thinking about the marathon 16 weeks away, she started thinking about today's run. Instead of judging her pace against her goal time, she started judging her effort against her own capacity. Instead of viewing training as something to get through, she started viewing it as something to savor. This shift didn't just improve her training experience, it improved her performance. When race day came, she wasn't just physically prepared, she was mentally prepared to embrace whatever the experience brought. Pillar 3. Faith in the invisible work. Perhaps the most challenging aspect of patience is trusting that work is happening even when you can't see immediate results. This is what I call faith in the invisible work, the understanding that growth often happens below the surface in ways that aren't immediately apparent. When you practice a skill, your brain is literally rewiring itself, creating new neural pathways and strengthening existing ones. This process is invisible and gradual, but it's happening every time you engage in deliberate practice. When you work on personal development, you're changing thought patterns and emotional responses that may not show up for weeks or months. When you build relationships, you're creating trust and understanding that accumulates over time. The invisible work requires faith because you have to keep investing effort without seeing immediate returns. It requires patience because the timeline is unpredictable and often longer than you'd prefer. But it's this invisible work that creates the foundation for everything visible and impressive that follows. Patience as power, not passivity. The most important reframe we need to make is seeing patience not as a limitation but as a superpower. Patient people aren't slow, they're strategic. They aren't passive, they're purposeful. They aren't weak, they're wise enough to understand how real change happens. Patience gives you the power to outlast your competition, because most people quit before they see results. Patience gives you the power to make better decisions, because you're not operating from a place of urgency and desperation. Patience gives you the power to build something meaningful, because you're willing to invest in foundations that others skip. In a world of instant gratification, patience becomes a competitive advantage. While others are jumping from opportunity to opportunity, chasing the next shiny thing, you're going deep. While others are looking for shortcuts, you're building genuine skill. While others are reacting to every change and setback, you're staying focused on your long-term vision. This is why patience is revolutionary. It's not just a nice character trait, it's a strategic choice that determines the quality and depth of everything you create. Chapter 3. The Master's Timeline. The 10 0-hour reality check. Malcolm Gladwell popularized the idea that it takes 10 hours to achieve mastery in any field. While the exact number has been debated, the underlying principle remains sound. Expertise takes time, lots of it, and there are no real shortcuts. But here's what most people miss about the 10 0-hour rule. It's not just about putting in time, it's about putting in deliberate, focused practice over an extended period. It's about being patient enough to work on your weaknesses rather than just practicing what you're already good at. It's about embracing discomfort and difficulty as signs that you're growing. Let me tell you about David, a chef who understood this deeply. When he started cooking professionally, he was obsessed with creating his own signature dishes, developing unique flavors, and making his mark on the culinary world. But his mentor, a chef with 30 years of experience, gave him different advice. Master the fundamentals first. Learn to make a perfect omelette, a perfect roast chicken, a perfect sauce base. Do it 1,000 times until your hands know the movements without your brain having to think. David was impatient with this advice at first. Making basic omelettes felt beneath him when he had visions of culinary creativity dancing in his head. But he trusted the process and spent 2 years mastering fundamentals that other young cooks rushed through. Years later, when David did start creating his signature dishes, they were built on a foundation of technical mastery that allowed his creativity to soar. His patience with the basics had given him the freedom to innovate at the highest level. Embracing the plateau. One of the most challenging aspects of any learning journey is the plateau periods, where you feel like you're not making progress despite consistent effort. Plateaus are where most people quit, convinced that they've hit their limit or that they're not cut out for their chosen pursuit. But plateaus aren't signs of failure, they're signs of integration. When you hit a plateau, your brain is consolidating what you've learned, organizing new information, and preparing for the next level of growth. It's like a video game where you need to complete all the challenges on one level before you can access the next. The key to surviving plateaus is understanding that they're temporary and necessary. This is where patience becomes essential. You have to trust that if you keep showing up, keep practicing, keep engaging with the work, the breakthrough will come. Maria experienced this when she was learning to speak French. For the first few months, she felt like she was making rapid progress. New vocabulary, basic grammar structures, simple conversations, everything felt exciting and achievable. Then she hit a wall. For what felt like months, she felt like she wasn't improving at all. She understood more than she could express, and her mistakes felt constant and frustrating. This is when most language learners quit. But Maria had learned about the plateau phenomenon. Instead of getting discouraged, she trusted the process. She kept showing up to her French classes, kept listening to French podcasts, kept attempting conversations despite her frustration. Then one day, something clicked. She was listening to a French radio program and realized she was understanding not just the words, but the nuances, the cultural references, the humor. Her brain had been working behind the scenes during the plateau, making connections and integrations that weren't immediately visible. Stories from the path. Every master has a story of patience paying off in unexpected ways. These stories share common themes: early struggle, periods of doubt, moments of wanting to quit, and the decision to persist despite uncertainty. Take Ira Glass, the host of This American Life, who spent years creating radio stories that he knew weren't good enough. In a now famous quote, he talked about the gap between your taste, which is sophisticated from consuming great work, and your ability, which takes time to develop. Most people quit during this gap period, unable to tolerate creating work that doesn't meet their own standards. But Glass understood something crucial. The only way to close the gap between your taste and your ability is to keep creating, even when your work disappoints you. He was patient enough to be bad at something long enough to become good at it. This patience with his own development process eventually made him one of the most influential voices in radio. Or consider the story of Julia Child, who didn't start cooking seriously until she was 36 years old. She spent years learning French cooking techniques, making countless mistakes, burning countless meals, and struggling with skills that came more naturally to others. She was patient with her own learning curve, and that patience eventually led to mastering French cooking and revolutionizing how Americans thought about food. These stories matter because they remind us that mastery isn't reserved for prodigies or people with natural talent. It's available to anyone willing to be patient with the process of growth. Chapter 4. The Practice of Presence. Mindful Engagement. The foundation of active patience presents the ability to be fully engaged with whatever you're doing right now, even when it's difficult or boring. This isn't just a nice spiritual concept, it's a practical skill that dramatically improves your ability to learn, grow, and create. When you're present, you notice more. You see patterns, opportunities, and solutions that you miss when your mind is elsewhere. You make fewer mistakes because your attention isn't divided. You enjoy the process more because you're actually experiencing it, instead of thinking about how long it's taking or when it will be over. But presence is challenging in our distracted world. We've trained our brains to constantly seek stimulation, to multitask, to always be thinking about what's next. Learning to be present requires intentional practice. Start with a simple exercise. Whatever you're doing right now, do only that thing. If you're reading, just read. If you're walking, just walk. If you're having a conversation, just listen. Notice when your mind starts to wander to other tasks, other concerns, other possibilities. Don't judge this wandering, just gently bring your attention back to the present activity. This sounds simple, but it's profoundly difficult. Your mind will resist. It will tell you that you're being inefficient, that you should be multitasking, that you need to be thinking about other things. This resistance is normal. The practice is in returning to presence again and again. The art of deep work. Cal Newport coined the term deep work to describe the ability to focus without distraction on cognitively demanding tasks. This kind of work is becoming increasingly rare and increasingly valuable. It's also essential for developing mastery in any field. Deep work requires patience because it's uncomfortable. When you're working at the edge of your ability, your brain craves distraction. It wants to check email, scroll through social media, or switch to an easier task. Learning to sit with this discomfort, to stay with the difficult work, is a form of patience that pays enormous dividends. Here's how to develop your deep work capacity. Start small. Begin with 25-minute sessions of focused work on your most important task. No phone, no internet, no multitasking, just you and the work. When the timer goes off, take a short break, then do another session. Gradually increase the duration. As your focus muscles strengthen, extend your deep work sessions to 45 minutes, then an hour, then 90 minutes. Most people can't maintain deep focus for more than 90 minutes at a time, so don't try to push beyond that. Create rituals around your deep work. Have a specific location, time of day, and setup that signals to your brain that it's time for focused work. Eliminate distractions before you begin. Turn off notifications, close unnecessary tabs, put your phone in another room. Embrace the discomfort. When you feel the urge to escape to something easier, recognize it as a sign that you're working at the right level of challenge. Breathe through it. Remind yourself that this discomfort is where growth happens. Cultivating flow states. Flow is that magical state where you lose track of time, where the work feels effortless, where you're completely absorbed in what you're doing. It's the opposite of forcing or struggling. It's smooth, natural, and deeply satisfying. But here's the paradox. You can't force flow states, but you can create conditions that make them more likely. And those conditions require patience. Flow typically happens when there's a perfect balance between the challenge of the task and your skill level. If the task is too easy, you get bored. If it's too hard, you get anxious. But when it's just right, challenging enough to require your full attention, but not so difficult that you feel overwhelmed, flow becomes possible. This means that cultivating flow requires patience with your current skill level. You can't try to work on tasks that are far beyond your ability and expect to find flow. You have to be patient enough to work at your edge, gradually expanding your capabilities. It also requires patience with the process of entering flow. You can't just decide to be in flow and have it happen instantly. You have to warm up, settle in, and give yourself time to become fully absorbed in the work. Think of flow like a river that you're trying to enter. You can't jump in at full speed and expect to immediately match the current. You have to wade in gradually, feel the water, sense the movement, and allow yourself to be carried by the natural rhythm of the work. Chapter 5. Navigating Setbacks. Failure as Teacher. The relationship between patience and failure is intimate and essential. Impatient people see failure as evidence that they should quit, change direction, or try something else. Patient people see failure as information, as feedback, as an inevitable part of any worthwhile journey. This shift in perspective changes everything. When failure becomes your teacher rather than your enemy, setbacks become setups for comebacks. When you expect difficulties rather than being surprised by them, you're mentally prepared to work through them. Consider the story of James Dyson, who created 126 failed prototypes before developing the revolutionary vacuum cleaner that made him famous. Each failure taught him something. Each setback refined his understanding of the problem he was trying to solve. His patience with the iterative process of invention and his ability to see failure as progress rather than defeat eventually led to breakthrough success. But you don't need to be inventing revolutionary products to apply this principle. Every skill you develop, every goal you pursue, every relationship you build will involve setbacks. The question isn't whether you'll face difficulties, it's how you'll respond to them. Patient people respond to failure with curiosity. What can I learn from this? What would I do differently next time? What does this tell me about what I need to work on? Impatient people respond to failure with judgment. This is taking too long. I'm not good at this. I should try something else. The resilience muscle. Resilience isn't a trait you're born with, it's a skill you develop, and like any skill, it gets stronger with practice. Every time you face a setback and choose to continue, you're building your resilience muscle. Every time you encounter failure and choose to learn from it rather than be defeated by it, you're increasing your capacity to handle future challenges. This is why patience and resilience are so closely connected. Patience gives you the ability to see beyond immediate setbacks to long-term possibilities. It allows you to invest in recovery and learning rather than immediately seeking escape or distraction. Think of resilience like physical fitness. You don't build strength by avoiding heavy weights, you build it by gradually working with heavier and heavier loads. Similarly, you don't build emotional and mental resilience by avoiding difficulties. You build it by learning to work with increasingly challenging situations. The key is to start where you are and gradually expand your capacity. If small setbacks currently derail you for days, work on bouncing back more quickly from small setbacks. If criticism shuts you down, practice receiving feedback with curiosity rather than defensiveness. If uncertainty makes you anxious, practice sitting with not knowing what comes next. Transforming obstacles. The Stoic philosophers had a concept called the obstacle is the way. The idea is that the very challenges that seem to block your path are actually the path itself. The difficulties you face aren't distractions from your growth. They are your growth. This perspective requires tremendous patience because it asks you to see obstacles not as problems to be solved quickly, but as opportunities to be explored deeply. Instead of trying to get around challenges, you learn to go through them. Instead of avoiding difficulty, you learn to extract value from it. Rachel learned this when she was building her consulting business. Every obstacle felt like a sign that she wasn't cut out for entrepreneurship. When clients were slow to pay, when potential customers said no, when her marketing efforts didn't produce immediate results, her first instinct was to panic and change strategies. But then, she started approaching obstacles differently. Instead of seeing late payments as a sign of business failure, she saw them as an opportunity to develop better systems and communication. Instead of seeing rejections as personal failures, she saw them as market research that helped her refine her offer. Instead of seeing slow growth as evidence that she should quit, she saw it as a chance to build sustainable foundations. This shift in perspective didn't eliminate the obstacles, but it transformed her relationship with them. Instead of being defeated by challenges, she was strengthened by them. Instead of seeing difficulties as detours, She saw them as the very experiences that were preparing her for larger success. Chapter 6. The compound effect of patience. Small steps, massive results. One of the most powerful principles in personal development is the compound effect. The idea that small, consistent actions accumulate over time to create dramatic results. This principle is impossible to appreciate without patience, because the individual actions often feel insignificant in the moment. Consider the difference between 1 million given to you today and a penny that doubles every day for 31 days. Most people would take the $1 million, but the penny would actually be worth over 10 million by day 31. The catch is that for most of those 31 days, the penny looks worthless. It's only in the final few days that the compound effect becomes obvious. This is exactly how skill development works. The individual practice sessions, the daily habits, the small improvements, they don't feel significant when you're doing them, but they accumulate over time in ways that can seem miraculous to outside observers. Take the example of writing. If you write just 250 words per day, about 1 page, you'll complete a 90 zero-word book in exactly 1 year. That's a substantial novel or a comprehensive non-fiction book, but 250 words feels like nothing when you're writing it. It takes maybe 15-20 minutes. It's so small that it's easy to dismiss as unimportant. This is where patience becomes essential. You have to trust that small, consistent actions will accumulate into something meaningful, even when you can't see the accumulation happening day by day. Building momentum. Patience isn't just about enduring slow progress, it's about understanding how momentum works. Momentum is the compound effect in action. When you're patient enough to maintain consistent effort, even when results aren't immediately visible, you eventually reach a tipping point where progress accelerates dramatically. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. The initial attempts are frustrating and awkward. You fall, you wobble, you feel like you're making no progress. But then suddenly, something clicks. The balance becomes natural, the pedaling becomes smooth, and you wonder how it ever felt difficult. This momentum effect happens in every area of skill development, but you have to be patient enough to reach the tipping point. Most people quit during the awkward, wobbling phase, never experiencing the smooth, natural phase that follows. Professional development works the same way. The first year in any new field is often frustrating and overwhelming. You don't know what you don't know, everything takes longer than expected, and you make mistakes that seem obvious in retrospect. But if you're patient enough to work through this initial phase, you eventually develop the foundational knowledge and skills that make everything else easier. The exponential curve. Perhaps the most important concept to understand about patience and progress is the exponential curve. Linear thinking says that if you put in twice as much effort, you'll get twice as much result. But many areas of life follow exponential patterns, where small increases in input can create massive increases in output. This is why patience is so crucial in skill development. The relationship between practice time and skill level isn't linear, it's exponential. The 100th hour of practice is far more valuable than the 10th hour, not just because you've accumulated more total practice, but because your brain has developed the foundational patterns that make advanced learning possible. Network effects follow exponential patterns too. Your first few professional connections might not lead to any opportunities, but as your network grows, the value doesn't just add up, it multiplies. Each new connection can potentially connect you to their entire network. Knowledge acquisition follows exponential patterns. The more you know about a subject, the easier it becomes to learn new information in that area. Your existing knowledge provides context and connection points that make new learning stick. Understanding exponential curves requires patience because the early phases look disappointing. If you expect linear progress, you'll be frustrated by how slow things seem to develop initially. But if you understand that you're building the foundation for exponential growth, you can be patient with the seemingly slow start. Chapter 7. Patience in relationships. Growing others and yourself. Perhaps nowhere is patience more essential or more challenging than in relationships. Whether we're talking about romantic partnerships, friendships, family relationships, or professional collaborations, the ability to be patient with others' growth processes determines the depth and quality of connection possible. We often expect others to change at the pace we want them to change, or in the directions we think they should change. This expectation is a recipe for frustration and conflict. People grow at their own pace, in their own way, and often in directions we don't anticipate or immediately understand. Consider the story of Michael and Jennifer, married for 15 years. For years, Michael was frustrated by Jennifer's tendency to avoid difficult conversations. When problems arose, she would withdraw, change the subject, or find ways to postpone addressing issues. Michael's natural response was to push harder, to insist on immediate resolution, to interpret her avoidance as lack of caring. But, through counseling, Michael learned to be patient with Jennifer's processing style. He discovered that she wasn't avoiding difficult conversations because she didn't care. She was avoiding them because she needed more time to organize her thoughts and manage her emotional responses. When he gave her that time, when he approached conversations with patience rather than urgency, she was able to engage more openly and honestly. This shift didn't happen overnight. It required Michael to practice patience repeatedly, to resist his urge to force immediate resolution, to trust that Jennifer's slower processing style could still lead to meaningful connection and problem solving. The leader's greatest virtue. In leadership contexts, patience becomes even more critical. Leaders who lack patience tend to micromanage, to give up on people too quickly, to make hasty decisions that create more problems than they solve. Patient leaders, on the other hand, create environments where people can develop, take risks, and contribute their best work. Great leaders understand that developing others is a long-term investment that requires sustained patience. They don't expect immediate transformation when they provide feedback or coaching. They understand that behavior change is gradual and that people need multiple opportunities to practice new skills before they become natural. Sarah, a marketing director, learned this lesson when she was promoted to manage a team that included Tom, a talented but disorganized team member. Sarah's initial approach was to give Tom detailed feedback about his organizational issues and expect immediate improvement. When the improvement didn't come quickly enough, she became frustrated and started considering whether Tom was the right fit for the team. But then Sarah's mentor asked her a crucial question. How long did it take you to develop your organizational systems? Sarah realized that her own organizational skills had developed over years through trial and error, through making mistakes and learning from them. She had been expecting Tom to develop in weeks what had taken her years to master. This realization changed her approach. Instead of expecting immediate transformation, she worked with Tom to develop systems gradually. Instead of focusing on his failures, she celebrated small improvements. Instead of threatening his job security, she invested in his development. The result was remarkable. Not only did Tom's performance improve dramatically over the following months, but the entire team's performance improved as well. They had witnessed patient leadership in action and began to extend the same patience to each other and to their own development processes. Love as patient action. Perhaps the deepest expression of patience is in how we love others. Love without patience is conditional. It depends on others meeting our expectations, changing at our preferred pace, and responding to our needs immediately. Love with patience is unconditional. It accepts others as they are while supporting their growth at their own pace. This doesn't mean being passive or enabling destructive behavior. Patient love is active love. It means creating consistent, supportive conditions for growth while accepting that you can't control the timing or direction of another person's development. Patient love means listening without immediately trying to fix or change. It means supporting someone's dreams even when you don't understand them or when they take longer to achieve than expected. It means staying present during difficult periods instead of withdrawing or issuing ultimatums. The paradox is that patient love often creates more change than impatient demands. When people feel accepted and supported rather than pressured and judged, they're more likely to take risks, to be vulnerable, to attempt growth that might initially feel awkward or uncertain. This applies to self-love as well. How patient are you with your own growth process? Do you accept your current limitations while working toward improvement, or do you constantly judge yourself for not being further along? Do you celebrate small progress, or do you dismiss anything less than dramatic transformation? Learning to extend patience to yourself is perhaps the most important relationship skill you can develop, because it models for others how they can be patient with themselves and creates the internal conditions that make growth possible. Chapter 8: Your Personal Patience Protocol. Daily Practices. Developing patience isn't something that happens automatically or overnight. Like any other skill, it requires intentional practice and consistent application. The following daily practices will help you build your patience capacity systematically and sustainably. The morning patience intention. Start each day by setting a specific patience intention. This isn't a vague commitment to be more patient. It's a concrete plan for how you'll practice patience that day. For example, today I will practice patience with my writing by focusing on the process rather than worrying about the final product. Today I will practice patience in conversations by listening completely before formulating my response. Today I will practice patience with my learning by celebrating small progress rather than focusing on how far I have to go. Write your intention down and refer to it throughout the day. This simple practice trains your brain to look for opportunities to practice patience rather than just hoping patience will appear when you need it. The pause practice. Throughout your day, you'll encounter moments when impatience arises. Maybe you're stuck in traffic, waiting for a slow computer to load, or dealing with a challenging person. These moments are perfect opportunities to practice the pause. When you feel impatience rising, take 3 deep breaths before taking any action. During these breaths, remind yourself, this moment is my chance to practice patience. How can I be present with what's happening right now instead of fighting against it? This practice serves 2 purposes. First, it interrupts the automatic impatience response and gives you space to choose a different reaction. Second, it reframes inconvenient moments as practice opportunities rather than annoyances. The evening reflection. Before bed, spend 5 minutes reflecting on your patience practice for the day. Ask yourself, when did I practice patience successfully today? When did impatience take over, and what triggered it? What did I learn about my patience patterns? How can I apply this learning tomorrow? Don't use this reflection as an opportunity for self-criticism. Instead, treat it as data collection that helps you understand your patience patterns and improve your practice over time. The weekly challenge. Each week, choose one specific area where you want to develop more patience. This might be patience with a particular skill you're learning, patience with a specific person in your life, patience with a project that's taking longer than expected, patience with yourself during a difficult period. Focus your daily practices around this weekly challenge. This focused approach is more effective than trying to be patient about everything all at once. Emergency techniques. Even with daily practice, you'll encounter situations where impatience overwhelms your usual coping strategies. These emergency techniques can help you regain your composure and respond from a place of patience rather than reactivity. The STOP technique. When you feel impatience reaching a crisis point, use the STOP acronym. Stop what you're doing. T. Take a breath or several. O. Observe what's happening in your body and mind. P. Proceed with intention rather than reaction. This technique is particularly useful in interpersonal conflicts, when dealing with technology problems, or when facing unexpected obstacles to your plans. The zoom out method. When you're trapped in impatient thinking, try mentally zooming out to see the bigger picture. Ask yourself, Will this matter in a year? What would I tell a friend who was facing this same situation? How does this temporary frustration fit into my larger goals and values? What opportunity for growth or learning might be hidden in this challenge? This perspective shift often reveals that what feels urgent and frustrating in the moment is actually quite manageable when viewed from a broader context. The reframe exercise: transform your impatient thoughts by consciously reframing them. Instead of, "This is taking forever," try, "This is giving me time to think, plan, prepare." Instead of, "I should be further along by now," try, "I'm exactly where I need to be in my learning process." Instead of, "This person is being difficult," try, "This person is dealing with something I might not understand." Practice these reframes regularly so they become more automatic during stressful moments. Long-term strategies. Building deep, lasting patience requires more than daily practices and emergency techniques. It requires long-term strategies that address the root causes of impatience and create sustainable habits of patient thinking and behavior. Develop a growth mindset. Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset is directly relevant to patience development. A fixed mindset says, "I am who I am, and my abilities are largely predetermined." A growth mindset says, "I can develop my abilities through effort, strategy, and learning from others." People with growth mindsets are naturally more patient because they see challenges as opportunities to develop rather than threats to their self-image. They're more willing to struggle with difficult tasks because they believe the struggle itself is valuable. To develop a growth mindset, replace "I can't do this" with "I can't do this yet." Focus on the process of learning rather than just the outcomes. View mistakes as information rather than failures. Seek out challenges that stretch your current abilities. Learn from others who have mastered skills you want to develop. Build your tolerance for discomfort. Much of impatience stems from discomfort avoidance. We want to escape uncertainty, frustration, boredom, or confusion as quickly as possible. Building your tolerance for these uncomfortable feelings increases your capacity for patience. Start small. Choose minor discomforts to practice with. Sit in meditation for gradually increasing periods. Take cold showers. Exercise to the point of mild discomfort. Practice skills that feel awkward or difficult. Have conversations about topics you usually avoid. The goal isn't to seek out suffering, but to build your confidence that you can handle discomfort without immediately needing to escape it. Create systems that support patience. Your environment and systems can either support patience or undermine it. Design your life to make patient choices easier. Remove or minimize sources of instant gratification that train your brain for impatience. Create physical spaces that support deep work and reflection. Build routines that include regular practice of whatever skills you're developing. Surround yourself with people who model patience and support your growth. Choose projects and commitments that align with your long-term values rather than short-term impulses. Cultivate a long-term perspective. Perhaps the most important long-term strategy is developing the ability to think and plan in longer time horizons. Most impatience comes from short-term thinking focusing on immediate problems while losing sight of long-term goals. Practice thinking in terms of decades rather than days. Where do you want to be in 10 years? And what patient work would get you there? What relationships do you want to build? And how can you invest in them consistently? What skills do you want to develop? And how can you practice them regularly? What kind of person do you want to become? And what daily habits would create that transformation? When you're clear about your long-term vision, it becomes easier to be patient with short-term setbacks and delays. You can see them as part of a larger journey rather than isolated problems. Conclusion: the patient revolution. As we reach the end of our journey together, I want you to consider a radical possibility: that patience isn't just a personal virtue, but a revolutionary force that could transform our world. Imagine a society where people were patient enough to address complex problems rather than demanding quick fixes. Imagine leaders who made decisions based on long-term consequences rather than short-term political gains. Imagine relationships built on deep understanding rather than immediate satisfaction. Imagine businesses focused on sustainable value creation rather than quarterly profit maximization. This isn't utopian thinking. It's the natural result of individuals choosing patience over impatience, depth over surface, substance over speed. Every time you choose to be patient, you're contributing to this larger transformation. But the revolution starts with you, in the small moments of your daily life. It starts when you choose to stay with a difficult conversation instead of walking away. It starts when you practice a skill despite not seeing immediate improvement. It starts when you invest in relationships without knowing exactly what you'll get in return. Your patient path forward. As you leave this audiobook and return to your regular life, you'll be tempted to fall back into old patterns of impatience. This is normal and expected. Change itself requires patience. Here's what I want you to remember. Patience is not about becoming passive or accepting less than you deserve. It's about becoming strategic, intentional, and wise about how real change happens. It's about having the courage to work on things that matter, even when the timeline is uncertain. Patience is not about perfection. You will have impatient moments, impatient days, maybe even impatient weeks. The practice is in returning to patience again and again, not in never losing it. Patience is not about doing everything slowly. It's about moving at the speed that allows for depth, quality, and sustainability. Sometimes that's faster than you expect. Sometimes it's slower. Most importantly, patience is a gift you give yourself. When you choose patience, you choose to be present for your own life instead of constantly rushing towards some future moment. You choose to extract value from experiences instead of enduring them. You choose to build something meaningful instead of settling for something quick. The long view? Years from now, when you look back on your life, you won't remember the moments when you chose convenience over growth, speed over quality, or reaction over response. You'll remember the times when you had the patience to do something difficult, to support someone through their struggle, to create something that mattered. You'll remember the skills you developed through patient practice, the relationships you deepened through patient love, the problems you solved through patient thinking. You'll realize that the moments when patience felt most difficult were often the moments when you were growing most rapidly. This is the deeper truth about patience. It's not just a means to an end, but an end in itself. The patient person doesn't just achieve different results, they become a different person. They develop wisdom, resilience, presence, and depth that no amount of speed or efficiency can provide. Your invitation? So, here's my invitation to you. Embrace the patient path, not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. Not because it's fast, but because it's lasting. Not because it's popular, but because it's powerful. Start where you are, with whatever challenge you're currently facing. Instead of looking for a way around it, look for a way through it. Instead of trying to speed up the process, try to deepen your engagement with it. Instead of focusing on when it will be over, focus on what you can learn while you're in it. The world needs more patient people. People who can see beyond immediate problems to long-term solutions. People who can invest in others' growth without expecting immediate returns. People who can create beautiful, meaningful things, despite not knowing exactly how long it will take. You have the opportunity to be one of these people. You have the opportunity to model a different way of living, working, and relating. You have the opportunity to participate in the quiet revolution of patience. The path begins with your very next choice. Will you choose patience or impatience, depth or surface, presence or distraction, growth or comfort? The patient path is waiting for you. It's been waiting all along. Welcome to the revolution.